Hi there, this is Aspen Pittman coming to you from Aspen Pittman Designs, APD Products. Welcome to our video operation manual for the Space Station V.3. You've probably just unpacked it, and we're going to show you how to get the most out of it in the fastest possible way. How to set it up, how to position it, how to use it live. Okay, the first thing you notice that all the controls, all the inputs, all the outputs are on one panel on the rear of the amplifier. That's our control panel. We have here the on-off switch, which you can simply turn on. You have the input for your left and right from your mixer or your keyboard or whatever you want to use, your guitar modeling amplifier. You have an output for sub. The output for sub is actually a full range combination of right and left. So it is just like taking a stereo mix to the front of house and putting it to mono. You've got everything that's in the left and the right track. It's in a single output and it's line level. That's our sub out. Of course, you can also use it into a sub. A sub usually has a limiting input filter, so it will limit the level of the sub, and you can control the volume of the sub separately. Of course, that's a powered sub. This is not a powered output. It is a line level output designed for a powered sub or a direct send to the front of house PA. Over here you have a level control, a width control, a mids and a high frequency HFQ level control. I recommend starting with everything right around 12 o'clock. So if you turn your width control up to about 12 o'clock, that's our side speaker level. That will give you a pretty much average setting. You can make it wider if you want more stereo. You can make it narrower if the room is very reflective and reverberant. You may need a little less, but 12 o'clock's a pretty good place to start. Now it is a three-way front end, and the level control controls the overall level of the mix. If you turn it up by itself, you're going to just hear the woofer. So a lot of times I recommend to people just turn up the level control to a pleasant listening level, depending on your instrument, how loud it is, or your mixer, how loud that is. That's going to be dependent on where you run it, but anywhere from, let's say, 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock would be a typical place of operation. Now you're going to just hear the woofer because we have a three-way electronically crossed over front speaker. We have a 8-inch woofer, we have a 1-inch compression driver, and that is our mids. And I usually bring our mids up to about 12 o'clock. If you want to, just turn them all the way up. You can really hear how loud they can be, and then back them up to about 12 o'clock, which is about where I usually like to hear them. They're tuned, in other words, for about that. And then the high frequency control, if you're playing a CD with some hi-hats or cymbals and you turn it all the way up, you're going to hear a lot of hi-hat and cymbal. You may want to back that off a little bit. Now once you've got your mid and your high frequency set, you can turn your width off, and you'll notice if there's a lot of stereo content, you just lost a lot of level and it became a very focused mono box, which it is at this point. It's L plus R. Same output we have from that front of house send. So we have everything that's in the left and right channel that is the same is now coming out of the box. When I bring up the width control, we have kind of the magic of the center point stereo is we've separated everything that's unique to left and right. We've put it to another amplifier and a speaker that is facing sideways. So it's out of phase, literally, perfectly, at a right angle to the front speaker. That's kind of the secret of how it works. So if you have a stereo signal from your Hammond, Leslie patch, or just a normal CD, you'll hear a nice amount of width come up right there with width, and you'll hear the stereo processing, and because it all comes from a central point, you're going to hear it everywhere you stand. That's kind of the secret to it. If you have a patch that's a little light on stereo content, you can increase the width and get a little bit more reverb or chorus out of that. A little too strong and you're in a reflective room, because this whole system works on the acoustics of the room. It all comes from one place, uses reflective surfaces. You might want a little less width. But generally speaking, if you start everything right around 12 o'clock, I think you're going to get a pretty good sound. Then you can tune it to taste from there. We have a specially designed side speaker. You might notice that the magnet's a little unusual. It's got a large hole in the center, and that's so we can allow the voice coil to let high frequency out the back of the speaker. We don't have any problem with mids and lows coming off the back side of the cone, but this allows for high frequency off both sides of the speaker. So the only thing we want to talk about now is positioning and talking a little bit about how it works in the room. Placement of the SS3, Space Station version 3, is critical to getting the most out of it. First of all, a lot of people intuitively would listen to a speaker on axis right in front of it, but this speaker isn't really a flashlight, it's a light bulb. It makes sound in all directions. It's 300 degrees of dispersion. It works on reflective sound between two speakers, one facing you and one facing completely left and right of you. It's the combination of those two together that give us the three-dimensional characteristic of a center point stereo. So to get the most blend, the most, I call it the bloom, you will hear it best when you're standing 4 or 5 feet away, or if you can improve the reflection possibilities. One is just leaving it on the floor. The floor itself becomes a reflecting point. Those two things bounce off the floor, the front and the side speaker, and they kind of mix and bloom. They don't mix, they repel each other, but that creates the effect. So on the floor is better than off the floor or on a pole. The exception to that rule might be if you're using a subwoofer, because a subwoofer will give you more low frequency, and also the box has more low frequency on the floor, so it sounds better on the floor. Now, if you're in a cramped area and you don't have the possibility to get 4 or 5 feet away from your box, there's a couple other ways that you can hear the combination of the front and the side speaker. One is don't be directly on axis. So if you're playing in front of it over here, you might try turning it at a 45-degree angle. That way you're hearing some side speaker and some front speaker, and you can better judge the amount of width you want to run. So either angled that way or angled this way. And if you're standing again out in front of it in this direction, you'll probably hear a better mix of the two speakers if you're in a very close proximity. Also, if you have the advantage of a corner, putting it in the corner, once again, it's going to give us more reflective characteristics. Side speakers now bouncing off the floor and the corners, so you get a little bit more bloom effect a little bit closer to the box. Now you can probably hear a pretty good effect maybe 3 or 4 feet away. Another great thing, if you're very close to it, would be to tilt it back. And you can do that just by tilting it against the wall, like that, or again, into a corner. I think if you could tilt it into a corner, that's pretty much the optimum amount of reflections that you can get. Now, if you don't have a corner, you don't have a wall, and you want to tilt it, any little object, one thing that's popular is a little tire chalk, a little piece of rubber. You can put it under the front of the box. I'm using a little direct box here. Put it under like that, tilt it up. This gives you a little more projection into the audience too, and you'll hear a little bit more yourself. Depending on how far back you push this is how much angle you'll get. So that's another possibility, another way to use it. One thing we've kind of found out through our network of early adopters is that they sometimes in close quarters, they like to put it horizontally, that is, lay it on its side. There's no reason in the world why you can't do that. Of course, when you do it like this, one side of the speaker's on the floor, so you only really get the benefit of one speaker. However, if you use that technique of angling it, a little relief like that allows the floor to become a first point order of reflection right off the speaker, and it combines very quickly with that front speaker and gives you a very close proximity bloom. We really like this, by the way. We think that's a great way to use it, especially if you're in your small stage. You also might be in a position where if you're putting it upright, you've got a player immediately to the left and the right that's going to hear way too much side speaker from your keyboard or your system. So by doing it this way, we're using the wall or the ceiling and the floor as the reflecting points. And so we've taken the side speaker out of everybody's ear. If you're playing right next to a drummer, he may not like the idea of that side speaker, which is only the left and right content going directly into his ear. So this is another way of doing it. Some guys are using an actual amp stand, and that elevates it a little bit. So by using an amp stand, you just basically pick it up, put it in an amp stand, something like this. Try not to break my cables. And once again, if you're in close proximity, you now have the ability of hearing the side speaker reflect off the floor and off the back wall in this case, and you're pretty much on axis with this, so you get a nice early bloom. For bigger rooms, again, this is probably not necessary. It'll be just great on the floor, a little tilt back if you want, but for those tighter club situations, these are some options that work pretty well. I recommend when you set up your space station to play a familiar CD through it. and set everything right around 12 o'clock like I suggested and walk around the room. You'll notice that what you're hearing stays consistent. The image never collapses. And it's probably a better way to judge how loud you are, because Space Station version 3 is deceptively loud at distances. Like a light bulb, it fills the room, not like a flashlight. It's not going to be loud to the guy standing in front and nobody to the left or right can hear it. Everybody on stage is going to hear it. Everybody in the audience is going to hear it. And when you play a little music through it, like a CD or an MP3 off your phone, for example, something you're familiar with, and walk around, you'll notice the dimension of this product works better and better, even to the far corner of the room. So that's a great way to set it up. When you get there early, just play a little music through it and walk around the room. And you can try some of these various positions and see if they make a difference for you. That's about all I wanted to say, just a real simple overview of how to set it up and get going. I would like to remind you that there's a fax question, a frequently asked questions tab on our Centerpoint website, and you're very welcome to email us with your questions. People using this thing in various applications, they're very excited about it. They're telling you how they best used it, so we encourage you to go online and learn more about it. And thanks very much for buying one of our products, and God bless you.